Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
In the heart of the Cold War, when fear of nuclear annihilation hovered over every household and whispers of espionage echoed through the corridors of government, there was a shadow war, one that did not involve missiles, tanks, or soldiers, but something far more insidious. It was a war fought with microbes, toxins, and secret science. Behind closed doors, government agencies, backed by military laboratories, sought to understand how a biological attack might cripple the United States. The logic, they said, was defense. The reality was experimentation on the unsuspecting public. In one quiet American town, this secret battle would unfold in the most unsettling way possible, an experiment that would infect an entire community without their knowledge, carried out not by an enemy nation, but by the very government sworn to protect them. The town was not a target of war, nor was it on any battlefield. It was chosen for its unassuming nature, its size, its climate, and most importantly, the ability of scientists to study the effects without attracting suspicion. The operations architects operated under the chilling assumption that if an enemy unleashed a biological weapon on an American city, authorities needed to know exactly what would happen and how fast it would spread. But instead of simulations or laboratory trials, they decided that real-world data could only be gathered through live tests on real people. During the 1950s and 1960s, the United States Army's Biological Warfare Laboratories, headquartered at Fort Detrick in Maryland, launched a series of covert programs under names like Operation Sea Spray, Operation Large Area Coverage, and Operation Whitecoat. While some of these projects have since become notorious, one of the most disturbing involved the deliberate release of biological agents into small towns to track infection patterns. These operations were cloaked in national security secrecy, buried under classified files, and justified as vital to Cold War preparedness. Citizens were never told. Consent was never sought. And as history later revealed, the line between simulation and exposure was often crossed. One such experiment targeted a small Midwestern town, a place that embodied the image of post-war America. Its streets were lined with modest homes. Children played freely in the yards, and its residents enjoyed the calm rhythm of rural life. In the early morning hours, military scientists released a cloud containing a supposedly harmless bacterium, Serratia marcescens, along with zinc-cadmium sulfide particles. The plan was to see how wind patterns, weather, and human movement spread the bacteria throughout the community. The bacteria's reddish pigment made it easy to trace in environmental samples, while the zinc-cadmium sulfide, later found to be a potential carcinogen, was used to mimic the behavior of anthrax or plague in the atmosphere. For days, the military quietly monitored the town. Hidden sampling devices collected air particles from rooftops, streetlights, and even school grounds. Local hospitals and clinics were secretly observed for upticks in respiratory illnesses, infections, and unusual symptoms. The residents went about their lives unaware that they were, in effect, part of a nationwide biological warfare drill. The results were both scientifically revealing and ethically damning. Within days, reports began to emerge of unexplained illnesses. Several residents developed severe pneumonia-like infections, and a few even died. At the time, local doctors could not pinpoint a cause, and no public health warnings were issued. It wasn't until years later, long after the Cold War paranoia had cooled, that declassified government documents confirmed the town had been part of a deliberate biological test. The justification given by the military was that Serratia marcescens was considered non-pathogenic to healthy humans, meaning it was not believed to cause serious disease. Yet this assumption ignored the elderly, the young, and those with weakened immune systems. In one infamous related incident, a patient in San Francisco died after Serratia marcescens from a similar test infected his heart, leading to a fatal endocarditis. Scientists at the time brushed off the connection, but the coincidence was too stark to ignore. What made these experiments particularly controversial was not just the release of the bacteria, but the secrecy surrounding it. In the eyes of the government, telling the public would compromise the experiment's validity, People might change their behavior if they knew they were being studied. But this secrecy also stripped away the most basic human right, the right to consent to medical experimentation. Many experts later argued that these tests violated the Nuremberg Code, the set of ethical research principles established after the atrocities of Nazi human experimentation came to light during World War II. In the decades that followed, investigative journalists, historians, and public health advocates worked to uncover the full scope of these operations. Congressional hearings in the 1970s revealed that between 1949 and 1969, the U.S. military had conducted at least 239 open-air tests of biological and chemical agents on American soil, many of them in populated areas. Some tests used benign tracers, but others, like the one in this small Midwestern town, involved live microorganisms. The Army defended its actions by claiming the data was crucial for national defense, especially against the threat of Soviet bioweapons, but the public outcry was immense. By the time these details came to light, many of the individuals involved in planning and carrying out the tests were retired or deceased. Victims and their families faced the impossible task of proving a direct link between their illnesses and the long-past experiments. Government accountability was minimal. In some cases, lawsuits were filed, but most were dismissed due to lack of definitive proof. Yet the legacy of mistrust remained. For many Americans, this revelation confirmed a darker suspicion that in the name of security, the government had been willing to treat its own citizens as expendable test subjects. Today, the story of that infected town serves as a sobering reminder of the Cold War's hidden costs. While the era is often remembered for nuclear brinkmanship, spy scandals, and proxy wars, it also harbored a domestic front where science, secrecy, and national security collided in morally ambiguous ways. The ethical breaches of these experiments have since shaped modern research protocols, reinforcing the principles of informed consent and public transparency. Yet the unease persists. If such experiments could be carried out in the open air of an American town, what else might have been done under the cloak of national security? In the end, the people of that town became unwilling participants in a grand experiment, a chapter in Cold War history written not with the ink of treaties or the smoke of battlefields, but with the invisible spread of microscopic life. They lived and breathed the experiment without ever knowing it, their trust betrayed in the quiet pursuit of a dangerous kind of knowledge. History records it now as a warning, one that speaks to the balance between preparedness and ethics, between the security of the many and the rights of the individual. In the shadows of the Cold War, that balance was tipped, and an entire community paid the price.